Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Welcome to this episode. And I feel like this is the start of the summer because for most of you who, especially the ones who have children or who are thinking about taking a summer break, this is probably going to be one of your final weeks of work, or at least full-time work. So if you are joining the summer club this year, welcome. I am going to be taking the majority of August off, actually. So I will be preparing myself for a lot of painting of our new house, which at the time of recording this, we are just about to exchange in the relatively complex legal process of buying a house that the UK possesses. But nevertheless, we are just about to exchange and we will be picking up the keys and no doubt doing an awful lot of painting and decorating and DIY, which we have promised ourselves will be easy. Because how difficult can it be to put on a lick of paint in every single room that the house possesses? If anybody out there is thinking, oh, Jess, is there a betting pool for how long it will take you to give up on your painting dreams and hire a decorator? I think we can give you pretty good odds. So just let me know. Obviously, that is not in seriousness at all. Obviously, I cannot condone any kind of gambling about my painting or lack of painting skills. In this particular kind of aspect. But I am very, very excited about getting into a house that we will be able to decorate. Because obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you will know that we have been living in military quarters for the last few years and they've been very, very magnolia. So I have got big plans for colour. If you do see me on any video trainings moving forward, hopefully after August, you will see me with a background that does not look like it is from 1984, with kind of magnolia walls and white ceilings. That will be an absolute dream for me. But I am excited about today's episode. I'm excited to head into summer and start bringing in some really, really cool analysis episodes for you over the summer that you can either choose to listen to whilst you are enjoying some time off or that you can pick up on in September. But before I get into the improper use of AI and how it could be destroying your sales process, I want to touch on something that we have literally just launched, and you might be hearing about it in your inbox, or you might have already heard about it in your inbox at the time that this episode goes live. So over the last few years, I obviously have built an extensive database of contacts across 4 key industries in the UK, across technology, across sports, professional services, and across the charity market. And over the last 18 years of being in sales, I have had numerous decision makers reach out to me and ask if I know people who can provide coaching, consulting, and different service provision across health and wellness, across executive coaching, talent development, communications, marketing, and more. And over the last few years, I have spent time and energy referring people and creating relationships with people within organisations around the UK. And that's taken quite a lot of time and energy on my part. So I started saying to decision makers inside these companies, look, actually, it takes a lot of time and energy for me to refer really good people and make sure that you have a great buying experience. Have you thought about just using something like a directory to find service providers, when you need them off the cuff? And the decision makers that I was talking to came back and said, well, yeah, we'd love something like that, but only if you built it. So over the last probably 12 months, I have been building an idea that I'm now calling the Expert Services Directory, and that we have officially launched to the waitlist as this episode airs. If you do want to hear more about it, please do go to smartleaderscell.vipmembervault.com/coming soon. That's smartleaderscell.vipmembervault.com/coming-soon. That link is in the show notes as well for you. So if you do want to go and check it out, you can absolutely have a look, put yourself on the little wait list, and it will send you an automated email and tell you a little bit more about the Expert Services Directory. But essentially, it is a directory to help coaches, consultants, and service providers to generate qualified inbound leads from those 4 industries that I have the best relationships with and over 15,000 contacts in. So across charities, technology, professional services, and sports firms in the UK. So if you are interested in working with any of those markets in the UK and you want to increase the amount of inbound leads that you get, so not proactive outreach, but the ones that you get that come to you, then definitely go to smartleaderscell.vipmembervault.com/coming-soon, or check out the link in the show notes, and that will give you a bit more insight on the directory. We have very, very limited spots in terms of locations and specialisms. So if you do want to be part of it, make sure that you get yourself in early, because at the time that we are opening to the waitlist, we already have a few hundred people who are already interested in this particular idea. So if you are not on my newsletter and therefore didn't hear about the waitlist, now is your time to check it out properly. All right. So with that in mind, let's start talking about AI in the sales space. And this is an episode that I have waited and done a lot of research to make sure that I bring you in the best possible way, because I think that sometimes it can be easy to assume that I don't like social media or AI or technology in general. And actually, that is not the case. I have worked in the tech space for a very long time. I actually started out as a tech recruiter. In my corporate sales background, I was fortunate enough to work with some incredible developers, people developing software, products and services for organizations. I then progressed into working with senior decision makers and recruiting senior decision makers like project program managers, CIOs, CTOs for some of the world's biggest organizations. And so whilst I am not somebody who is good at using technology, I've been fortunate to be at the forefront of technological development for a very, very long time. And I've been able over the last 18 years to work with a number of organizations and watch how they are taking technology to new levels. And that has always been something that's really exciting. Obviously, I did then also go into running a business primarily online. So you could say that I'm like the world's best advocate for technology in that I love it, but also I hate to use it. So I'm probably the best tester that any company could have, because anything that is technical, I can break. And that is just a special skill that I didn't even know I had, but I can. So I've been really excited about this episode because AI has been a big, big topic in the sales world for probably the last 3 to 4 years. Now, I will preface this with AI has come into the online education space relatively recently, by comparison. So probably over the last 12 months in the online space, I've seen people starting to talk about the use of AI, and not just even in sales process perspectives, but from business building perspectives. You know, people in the last 12 months in the online education space have started talking about how they can use AI to create more content, how they can use things like custom GPTs and stuff in their business to reduce some of the strain that they have around client delivery. They've been talking about how they can use AI to automate processes and things that will help their overall customer experience. So not just specifically in the sales realm. But when we look at the B2B sales space and the companies that I've been working with extensively over the last few years, AI has been a conversation that has been going on for a lot longer. And in the last 3 to 4 years, it's become more intense. And there's been a lot more research around it. And I'm actually really fortunate that I am part of quite a few research panels and discussions, and I'm being interviewed quite regularly as somebody who is relatively prolific in the sales space and the best practice teaching of B2B sales space. So I'm hearing and having a lot of conversations about artificial intelligence. And I wanted to bring you this episode because some of the information that I'm hearing and seeing and some of the research that I'm even contributing to is really interesting for people who are selling to companies. So I'm not in this episode, I'm not interested or talking about how somebody might be using AI in their solo-driven business to sell to other solopreneurs. This is solely an episode about AI as part of your B2B sales process when you are selling to companies, because it is a huge and vast area. I'm also not an AI expert. I do know somebody who's really, really intelligent and actually has specialized in working with AI for a very, very long time. And he happens to be in the C-suite. So if you do want somebody who is qualified to talk about AI and actually knows where it's going, please reach out, let me know, and I will put you in contact with somebody who is an AI specialist. But what I want to talk to you about is from a sales perspective, how is AI shaping the current B2B sales landscape and what will it do? Where is it going from a sales perspective over the next 12 months? I'm also going to caveat this with 12 months in the AI space is a very, very short time. So if you happen to be listening to this in 2026, reach out. Things might have changed. But if you're listening to it in 2025, I'm going to do my best to talk about what you might want to consider over just the next 12 months as AI is starting to develop and as we're starting to get pitched with more AI products and services to help with parts of the B2B sales process, like outreach, for example, or client management, or CRM systems and cleansing of databases and things like that. So let's start with the fact that AI is in sales not a hugely new concept. Companies have been streamlining and automating sales processes for quite a long time in various guises. So this doesn't mean that they have had a bunch of robots using or creating sales processes behind the scenes, but it does mean that from a sales perspective, companies have used technology and automations for quite a while to make sure that things link up in the right way. These are things, and automations that are as simple as, okay, great, somebody has made a sale, let's trigger an invoice, through to things that are slightly more complex and, integrating things like chatbots that you've probably seen on websites for utilities companies or other organizations where you might have regular queries to replace some of their front end or initial sales staff that were being underutilized in, frankly, customer service based roles when they should have been spending their time on business development and account management. So AI in sales is not necessarily as new as it can feel in the online education space. However, some of the ways that people in the online education space are trying to use it are new and relatively untested in the B2B space. And that is what I'm getting asked a lot about right now. When I'm being asked to contribute to research, when I'm being asked to be interviewed, to be part of research panels and things, I'm being asked a lot about how individuals are using AI and how that can translate into organizations and if it even can translate. Because the big question around AI in sales processes used to be, will it replace salespeople? And categorically, no. I don't believe that AI will ever replace salespeople because people ultimately do buy from people. And unfortunately, until we have AI and given it the ability to replicate exact personalities, like mine, for example, which is pretty Marmite as personalities go, it's going to be more difficult. There are also generational issues, particularly for certain types of organizations and the consumers that they are working with. So, for example, in financial services, we still have generational issues that there are people who generationally don't understand the internet, they don't know how to access the internet. And so we have a lot of time before things could be fully automated or before roles could be fully replaced with AI, certainly in front end roles. However, it doesn't mean that AI is redundant in B2B sales. It doesn't mean that it's not being tested. But as ever, when you create something, you go through that initial testing phase, which means that it doesn't always work in the way that you want or expect. And unfortunately, with artificial intelligence, there are lots of things because it is training itself, especially with like open source AI. Because it is training itself, because it's learning from what people are putting into it, that it's not always accurate. And that is causing more harm for sales processes than good. It's also from, outside of sales causing certain issues. We are seeing, again, generationally, we're seeing teenagers who are spending and building and forming what they feel are real relationships with AI characters that they've built. So we're living in this weird world of, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger type projections, and we're all learning how to cope with the transition. And so it is going to be clunky for a while, and it does mean that we won't necessarily understand why or how things are happening when it comes to AI. And that's why, for me, AI in sales is incredibly dangerous right now, because it lacks testing in certain scenarios. And I'm going to outline what some of those are because I think it's important. So just to be clear, I'm not talking about things that companies have automated for a very long time or, processes that they've been able to streamline as a result of AI. What I'm talking about is the impact that artificial intelligence, specifically things like open source AI, so ChatGPT, Claude, other forms, are having on people's ability to think critically. Now, there's actually been studies, and yes, I am that boring person who reads studies because I'm a big nerd. If you didn't get that already, then I'm sorry. But it has happened. Microsoft actually produced a report on the impact of generative AI on critical thinking, which of course I went and read. And it's actually very interesting. And it talks about they took a sample set of over 900 people in different job roles, and they looked at the impact of using open source AI on their ability to problem solve, on their ability to think critically, and on their ability to feel more or less self-confident, which then impacted their ability to think critically and problem solve and all of those other things that, can be associated with higher or lower levels of confidence. Now, those skills, problem solving, objection handling, thinking critically, being able to have confidence and demonstrate confidence and credibility to others, are all critical sales skills. And the report, when it discussed the impact of generative AI on critical thinking, found that actually there were quite a few negative traits on the impact of using AI consistently and the ways that that would impact people's ability to think critically, and the way that it would actually reduce their own self-confidence to problem solve and to go on and research information and things. Now, if you want to read the full report, please do. It is very interesting. I will warn you, it's not your kind of bullet point highlights. It is an in-depth report, and it has been collated using many sources. But in layman's terms, what I took away from it was actually, when we create this over-reliance on AI that I'm seeing an awful lot in the online education space at the moment, what we're doing is removing people's self-confidence to think critically, to problem solve, to objection handle, to negotiate. And that is a real problem when it comes to sales skills and when it comes to B2B sales processes. Now, you might think, oh, well, Jess, actually it's fine because it really helps me. I type in, what should I write to this person? And something pops right up, and then maybe I edit it and, I make it sound a bit more like me, and that's all good. And like I say, there are certain circumstances where AI to run your business, to make your business more efficient, to go on and streamline processes and things in your business may be completely fine, may have zero negative impact whatsoever, it may in fact have really positive impacts, it may, give you the feeling that it actually gives you more creativity and things. However, from a best practice sales perspective, using open source AI specifically is dangerous for your sales process in that, we are seeing the links between an over-reliance on using AI to make decisions and therefore those negative impacts and consequences on critical thinking abilities and problem-solving abilities. But more importantly, there's no decent salesperson that's ever thought, oh, do you know what I want to do? I want to plug in my entire sales strategy in entirety and the way that I deal with difficult sales situations or challenging obstacles or negotiation scenarios and plugged all of it into ChatGPT. Because if they did, they would be an absolute pariah in the organisation they work with. It would be career suicide. Because if you imagine somebody putting in the entire sales strategy, I don't know, pick a company that you really like at the moment. Imagine that the top performing salesperson in that company, let's say for argument's sake, what have I got in my room at the moment that I'm looking at? I've got a Blue Yeti microphone, right? So let's say that the top performing salesperson at Blue Yeti has said, right, I'm going to put my entire sales strategy into ChatGPT. And then a competitor microphone company says that, their salesperson over there thinks, oh, sure, maybe I'll just go and see if they've got, if there are any sales strategies from Blue Yeti on ChatGPT. Let's just have a look. And they were able to download or get access to confidential competitor information, negotiation strategies, objection handling techniques, dangerous, really dangerous. And I work with a lot of companies who are on that technical side of things who have banned the use of open source technology or AI, in their organizations, in their workplaces. They have removed them, banned them from laptops. They are telling people not to access open source AI on their phones connected to Wi-Fi because they don't want proprietary information to go onto an open source AI model that the right person with the right search terminology can go and access. So salespeople are being warned, don't put your stuff in AI. If you've got something that's working, definitely don't put it in AI because your competitors might choose to go and access that. And that is posing an interesting problem for entrepreneurs who are selling or trying to sell to companies. Because when they go to AI and say to any kind of AI platform, tell me exactly how I'm supposed to write my LinkedIn profile so that companies who are interested in health and wellbeing providers want to work with me, that AI is only able to spit out what has been put in. And because good salespeople are not going and putting all of their techniques and, proprietary information that they have either trained their teams on or that they have used to make themselves very successful in their career, that's not the stuff that you're getting access to. So you're not getting the stuff from the best and the brightest of the sales world. You're getting information from whoever else has plugged it in. And I know that the people who listen to this podcast are super intelligent. So I bet right now you're like, okay, well, if I'm not getting it from the best salespeople in the world, I'm getting it from maybe people who aren't as good. And actually, I can now see some of the damage then that could be caused to my sales process. And you'd be absolutely right in that thinking. Because obviously, the difficulty with anything that is open source is that it's just picking things up from wherever all of the time. It doesn't necessarily filter between good and bad because it doesn't have that ability. The salesperson isn't going to go back to it every month and be like, okay, cool. Well, I used your strategy from last month, insert name of AI provider here, and these were my results. So they were good or not good. So you are just getting the information that it's spitting out from a variety of sources across the internet, across the information that people are directly inputting, across social media platforms that are choosing to use AI. Now, I'm not saying that this is, oh my goodness, we should all be terrified of AI. I think AI itself is great. I think there are going to be some amazing things that can come from it. But from a sales perspective and from a know your sources perspective, I'm saying if you are using it to act like a sales strategist for yourself, that is a dangerous idea because you don't know where that information is coming from. You don't know that it's proven information. And as we know from various testing that's been done on various AI platforms, you can get the wrong piece of information from AI and it will tell you that it's correct 4 or 5 times before it'll say, oh no, actually, it isn't actually correct. So we don't know the quality of information that we're getting. And I think that AI and using it from a sales perspective, to use it effectively, you would have to, A, have a good grounding in B2B sales strategy in theory anyway. I also think you would have to have a really good grounding and understanding of how to effectively search AI that most people, myself included, just do not have to a high enough level because it isn't common yet. Doesn't mean it won't be, it just isn't yet. And that's problematic. And it's causing problems that I can see from a practical sales perspective. So some of the things that I'm seeing from entrepreneurs who are trying to sell their services into corporates is that they're using AI platforms to act as sales strategists for them and thinking it's giving them a wholesale strategy when it isn't necessarily because it hasn't been plugged in, or where it is giving them a wholesale strategy, but it's pulled that sales strategy from multiple sources that weren't ever designed to work together. Therefore, it doesn't work in the right way. I'm also seeing people who are using AI that can actually get them kicked off of certain platforms. So, for example, I'm seeing people who use AI in outreach and they're using automated platforms to send that outreach on social media like LinkedIn, and then not realizing that that is breaching the terms and services of that platform. And so they're actually at threat of having LinkedIn profiles entirely removed, which would cut off a huge source of their own proactive lead generation. So, I'm not saying that AI is the problem. I'm saying not all of us are experienced enough to know how to use it yet in the most effective way. I'm also saying that from a sales perspective, the creations that AI gives is not going to replace personalized interactions. In fact, it is only going to make decision makers more happy to see personalized interactions. It's going to make it easier for them to distinguish what is a real interaction and what is AI interaction. And we're seeing this already. People have talked about, don't use double spacing anymore because it's AI or it's indicative of AI, or don't use ellipses anymore because it's indicative of AI. I've used all of these things for years and years and years, so I'm never gonna never gonna stop using them. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe it's picking up my stuff over blogs and things on the internet. But for me, it's one of those really interesting, perhaps, flaws of the AI plan is that despite the fact that it's been designed to be easier, to make life easier, actually it's becoming more and more recognizable, and it's making it harder for the people who are using AI because it has become so recognizable. And so that means that in sales processes across outreach, it means in sales processes, in things like your sales calls, if you're sticking to a script that has been generated by AI, for example, if you are writing proposals and you have plugged them into AI, or you've asked AI what to write in a good proposal, that actually these things are untested, they're not personalized, they are problematic, and they will cause problems to your sales process in the form of lower conversion rates from call to sale. They'll cause problems in your conversion rates from proposal to close deal. They'll cause problems in your conversion rates from outreach and the amount of proactive outreach messages that you would have to send to book calls. Because obviously, the more people use AI, the more that it starts to become problematic, the more issues that stakeholders have with it, the less they respond. So at the moment, is using AI in your B2B sales process something that you should be focused on? Not really. Unless you are an AI expert, unless you really know how to search it well and to make sure that it would get the most effective resources for you. And unless you also have a good grounding and background in sales, certainly B2B sales theory and understanding. If not, then using AI in your proactive sales process is not going to be helpful for you. And it's not going to be helpful for you on that initial phase in terms of trying to get conversions, but it's also not going to be helpful from a troubleshooting perspective, because obviously you haven't plugged in a solid strategy necessarily to start with. So there are problems that it's really posing in that B2B process, right from outreach through to how do we actually convert that first sale, and how do we go in and start maximizing the money that we're making from corporates. Does it mean it's problematic in all stages of the sales process? No. There are some phases of the sales process where actually it could probably be quite helpful for you. You know, if you don't know how to get a list of companies that you want to work with in a particular industry, I mean, you could just ask Google, but some of you might choose to ask AI instead, right? You might find that as you come to the end of working with a corporate client, you might experience a tricky situation. You might think, okay, how do I word this email to them? So you might use it for one-off occasions where you want to tighten up your communication or something. Great. But should it be used as part of your wider sales process? Not right now, unless obviously that caveat of you know AI, how to use it effectively, and you have a good grounding in sales theory and understanding. Should it be used as part of your outreach processes? Absolutely not, especially if you're integrating it with other platforms that it breaches any terms and services with, because that could really scupper your sales process altogether. And, you know, should you be reliant on it to create your sales strategy and to create any business strategy you're following? No. Absolutely not. Take expert advice instead from people who have done what you want to do, or who have been able to get other people to the goals that you want to hit. You know, if you really want to be a LinkedIn whiz, for example, find somebody who's amazing and who's got hundreds and hundreds of client results talking about how to show up as a thought leader on LinkedIn. You know, if it's that you want to understand more about finance, go and find somebody who's a qualified accountant and ask them to train you in reading your P&L or whatever it is that you want to learn. Please do not source qualified skills to ChatGPT or Claude or any other form of open source AI, because you cannot qualify that those are right. And you and I both know, as experts in our respective fields, you can go in and, have conversations with people who are not necessarily at the same level as you in your industry, and they won't always know why something works and why it doesn't. And they won't always know how to troubleshoot something, and they won't always know how to tailor something for different client scenarios and different problems that come up. So if you can imagine that even human beings have that issue, so does AI. Right? It's fallible. It doesn't know everything, and it takes a dedicated and experienced person to pull the best out of it. So if your specialism is not in AI, and you want it to do certain things for your kind of client delivery process or your invoicing process or other things that you use in your business, talk to an AI expert, absolutely. But an actual expert. Okay. And that brings me on to possibly one of my most sideways topics of this particular episode, which is this idea of custom GPTs. Now, obviously, I said, and I'm very clear, this episode is only about using AI as part of your B2B sales process and whether or not people should be doing that right now. Obviously, I think it's been pretty clear. At the moment, do I think it will add value to the majority of entrepreneurs' lives to add AI to their B2B sales process if they are not already experienced with sales theory and using AI? No, I don't think so. I think it will actually do more harm to your sales process than good. However, I am seeing a lot of people on the internet talk about custom GPTs and creating custom GPTs. And this is just a friendly neighborhood warning. I work with a lot of companies, like I mentioned earlier, who are adamant that they do not want their employees using open source AI in their offices. They don't want them accessing it on laptops and things. And they're certainly not creating custom GPTs. And I asked one of my tech clients about custom GPTs because I said, my clients for years have been saying, Jess, can you just download your brain so that we can ask it questions? And I was like, maybe custom GPTs, like I'm seeing them on the internet a lot. And, is that something that I could create, or like what would happen? And they were like, do not do that. And so, of course, being me, I asked why. And they said, well, there are a few reasons. One is they can go rogue because obviously they're picking stuff up from everywhere. And because I'm not an experienced AI consultant, I would have no idea how to shut that down. If an AI Jess robot went rogue, I've got no idea how I'd close that down. So they were like, so based on your level of technical ability, probably not a good idea. The other thing they said really shocked me, and actually I was genuinely quite afraid, because they said, here are a couple of custom GPTs that we've seen in the market that we've been able to go and get the original source code from. And I was like, I don't really understand this. And they said, okay, so when a custom GPT is created, the person who creates it plugs in the original information. And smart technical people are able to go and get that original information from custom GPTs. And at the moment, it's very difficult to stop that happening. Now, you might think, oh, well, yeah, but I'm not going to be selling custom GPTs to a company who are going to want to pull out my intellectual property. Completely agree. Companies sign terms and conditions, and your intellectual property belongs to you. They have no interest in stealing it from you. Not everybody who is using the internet is a company who've signed terms and conditions with you that state they will not take your intellectual property. So a warning word from me is, if you are going to create anything like that in your business, and this is from somebody, again, I say all the time, not an AI specialist. If you want me to connect you with somebody who's amazing, I absolutely can. But from somebody who's not an AI specialist and therefore doesn't have the expert level or technical understanding, that seems like quite a scary prospect. that people who do know how to search it could access my intellectual property. And for that reason, I will not now be creating a little Jess bot brain on the internet that is ask me anything. Because of those problems. Because if it does go rogue, who's liable? Is it me? I don't know. In this digital age, if it says something that's unpleasant, if it gives somebody the wrong advice, am I liable as the business owner who created it? I don't know. And equally, if somebody is able to take my intellectual property from it and I don't have the technical skills, capability, or expertise to avoid that happening, what happens? I don't know. They are big questions. They're not things that I can answer. But when it comes to AI in sales, do I think that you should be using it? Right now, no. I don't think it should be part of proactive sales processes. I don't think entrepreneurs should be reliant on it to try and get corporate clients. I certainly don't think that entrepreneurs should be using it to create sales strategies to help them sell to corporates. Because at the moment, there are not many people out there who genuinely have the level of technical expertise and knowledge needed to be able to filter things in the best way. I also think that it's become so recognizable when people are using AI on things like LinkedIn comments, on things like proactive outreach, in things like proposals, that actually decision makers are already getting numb to it. We all know what an AI comment looks like on LinkedIn now. It basically just summarizes whatever your original post was and pops in a couple of emojis. We know what they look like. We know what to look out for. So actually, they don't meet the purpose anymore. Do I think, though, that there will be a time in the future where we will be able to responsibly and ethically use AI in sales processes, around outreach and around negotiation and sales calls and things like that? Yes, at some point in the future. And that could be a lot quicker than I or anybody else imagines. What I will say, though, is we're not there right now, and we don't have the expertise right now to do it. So if you're going to be using AI in your business, please use it responsibly with your clients. Please use it responsibly for yourself. Protect your business, protect your intellectual property, make sure that you're doing all those things. But ultimately know that AI is never going to replace human salespeople. We all have that need for human interaction. And whilst AI can help us, and I imagine in the future we'll be able to help massively in the B2B sales processes with things like troubleshooting, with things like objection handling, with things like initial pre-qualification of leads. I think there is huge scope there. Right now it can't. Right now it's not programmed in the best way. And I don't want any of you to come a cropper for using it. So please, if you are considering using an AI strategy for your entire sales strategy, rethink that. Go and get responsible advice. Go and get qualified advice from wherever you need to. If you do want to be put in touch with an AI expert, or a company who is interested in using AI and needs somebody reliable, let me know, because I do know somebody who's absolutely amazing. And if you have any questions about AI and the future of AI in the sales space, reach out, let me know. I don't think I have all the answers. I think I have very few answers, but I've got some opinions. I can always let you know how they're going. All right. Upcoming episodes that we have over the next few weeks. So obviously it is summer. We are going to be talking about what you'll need to do as you come back into September. And I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about the directory as well. So that expert services directory that I mentioned right at the beginning of this episode is going to be live as you go and listen to this on wherever your favorite podcast player is. So if you are interested in generating more inbound qualified leads across the UK, across firms like charities, tech firms, professional services and sports firms, then make sure you head across to smartleadersell.vipmembervault.com/coming-soon. And we will put that link in the show notes for you as well to make sure that you can go and check it out. All right, I will see you in the next episode.
free audio post-production by alphonic.com.